to attract and be in those communities that you may be without right now, and mitigating bias in the interview process. Now, of the three, the advertising and outreach is the one that everybody says, oh, I just want to know, I want to know. My ask is that you take that advertising and outreach and you do the most work there, right? Because the communities that you want to serve, the communities you want to be in, won't happen over me sending you a couple places where you can go, a couple affinity groups that you can join. You will have to be an integral part of a community that you would like to enter, as in any other relationship that you would like to build. So you will get a few you get a few options as to what you can kind of dig into and some sites you can go to. But ultimately, that is going to be your heavy lift as far as the work that you want to do in order to be able to attract and potentially retain the type of talent that you'd like to see or people in your running group. And here's a big piece of it, right? When people go to work each day, they leave a lot behind. Most of us feel like, it is, we can come to work and just keep work and home separate. But I think for some folks, that it really hinders their ability to do the whole job because they can't bring their whole self. If part of their mind share or their emotional stake is in hiding who they are or maybe refraining from who they are, you lose a bit, right? And so what people leave behind are their opinions, their hairstyle, food, values, culture, all those things on the side, sexual orientation. And what we may say from a leadership perspective or even a coworker perspective is, well, you can bring all that to work if you'd like. But the problem stands is that people get cues from the environment that tell them whether or not they belong or are welcome, right? It's the subtle messages that where people mostly take their cues from. Because most people won't just come out and say, hey, I don't think your hair is professional. Now, it has happened in the past, and we've seen many opportunities for learning and education in that stance, but rarely will it happen so overtly. So a lot of these issues may stem from subtle cues of messaging. And we will have an opportunity for a couple folks to give us some feedback. So I want to kind of start off from one or two of you all to give me some support in this. So one of the questions that we have in organizational readiness is, what is the value in diverse vendors and support? The person who'll be answering this for us today will be Andy Kucher, one of the partners with the Philadelphia Distance Run. He's also an executive director of Students Run Philly Style. So Andy, please share with us what is the value in diverse vendors and support?
Absolutely. So when the Philadelphia Distance Run partners came together, we talked about this a lot, and we looked at it kind of from a short-term and a long-term value standpoint. And from a short-term, it was pretty simple. We wanted the race to be very local, we wanted even though it's going to capture people from all over, we wanted people to leave feeling like that was a very Philadelphia race. And you can't do that without having vendors and basically looking at the organization from every perspective to be reflective of the diversity of the community that we are in, and really celebrating the diversity of Philadelphia. And then from a long-term perspective, and this kind of is where it marries my work with Students Run Philly Style, is we are in the business of very often bringing young men and women of color into the long distance running space. And what we heard from them was they often looked around and said, I don't see myself here in 10 years and 15 years. And that was really powerful to the partners of the Distance Run. And we talked about how we really need to look at how we're valuing our diversity in our vendors and support and partnerships from a long-term lens, and really building it out. How in 10 years can our students look around and say, yeah, this is where I want to be, or new runners come to it and say, this is a comfortable and place where I see myself and I want to be. So all of that aligned. It was such a strong alignment of this is a value that's really important to us, and it's something that we can take tangible steps to achieve and track and hold ourselves accountable.
And I thank you for that share, and I commend you on continuing to push that. And a lot of that stems around kind of the representation, right? If I don't see myself here, and for the long term, it is likely I don't see people who represent me being there for the long term, right? Or having that type of support and that top coverage. So I think that is an opportunity as you start to look at your organizational readiness, is as you start to bring folks in, how will you retain them? And what does that look like? Do they have mentorship? Do they have support? Do they have representation that can help guide them through some of the process, some of the more difficult times? Maybe if it's, after the first 6 to 8 months is when the attrition happens, right? So maybe we bring in that mentor, that coach, or that facilitator to come in at month 5 before the issues start to happen, right? So one of the opportunities may be aligned with looking at some of the data and the attrition data, if that's available to you, or if it's just something that's a known, right? Is that we tend to get them for the, 1 or 2, they may come to the, to Philly running style for 2 weeks. And all of a sudden they just peter out and they don't show up again. Maybe we should have that person come in on day 1, week 2, week 4, and then start to extend it out so that they see that there is opportunity and there's longevity in the support in the organization. So we will get deeper into that, but I thank you for that share. That gives us greater insight as to some of the work that's being done, but also some of the efforts that are happening on your end. So thank you for that share. That's great. The business case for diversity, right? Oftentimes the business case for diversity is more on the softer side, right? There's some EQ level things, there are some softer side things on there. But there are also some true business cases, right? Bottom line, EBITDA, contribution margin, whatever you like to call it, it's bottom line profit that can be had by having a true business case for diversity, right? But from a softer side, right, it drives innovation, it increases your bottom line, people feel valued, you can capture new clients, as long as one of the things that happens to us in healthcare is the value proposition that we share from our diversity statement was, we want to be as diverse as the communities that we serve, right? So fostering new clients, and that also increases the bottom line, is having that same representation and having the community feel as if you are vested in them. Multicultural environment is better than monocultural. New thinking, a lot of these are softer side things, right? Likelihood generates new ideas, ensures products and services needs. The main one is attracting the best talent, right? You want to have the best, and in business, you're only as good as your options at times, right? And you want to have the best options as it pertains to talent and product. Is there an opportunity for you to get a better product, a better process around the talent pool that you receive, right? Better talent generally means higher performance. So what are those opportunities? It is to do this, to attract a diverse talent pool. Those are a bit on the softer side. Here's some bottom line information. And this was measured by the normalized Herfindahl-Hirschman index, which is a standard for some of these studies. And in 2014, they found that some companies that had multicultural diversity and better representation actually the likelihood to outperform the median, the national industry median, went up by 33% if you had ethnic minority folks on your executive team, right? And that would be in the 13% or the 12% minority quartile. That puts you at the upper echelon, which is not a lot, right? It's only 12% of your executive team would be ethnically diverse. The probability goes up by 33% that you will beat your industry median. On the board of directors, with 14% of that same, BIPOC population, you've got the opportunity to outperform your industry median by 43%. And those are hard bottom line numbers, right? So we've got oftentimes where the heart would love for you to go, the mind will prevent that from happening, right? Is it the right fit? Is it the right person? And you start to look, this allows the mind to follow the heart. If the mind is blocking for us to do the right thing, which is embrace the humanity portion of what we're speaking to. Great data here. And McKinsey and Company is somebody that, is an organization, top 4 consulting firm beyond reproach. Up next is from an organizational readiness perspective is making the leap. Oftentimes people say, I'm not ready. It's an impossible task. As we follow the cartoon, it can be painful. There's too much competition, right? It's oversaturated. I can't see what's going to happen, and you do have to take risks in this business, right? But I can't see, I'm afraid, or what if we go out and we do the wrong thing? I can't see exactly what's going to happen, right? They're pitfalls. If we get too many of these, we won't be able to do this, or what will our constituency, or what will our other runners say? It is a self-fulfilling fear, right? Or a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or I'm comfortable here, right? You're in a place where you would prefer if nothing else changed, right? You're in a very soft and comfortable space. Or conditions aren't ideal. And for the most part, oftentimes conditions will not be ideal, right? But the most important part is to jump. And oftentimes when people jump, They will look and say, what was the big deal about that? I can't believe that I was so afraid, or I was so timid, or I was unwilling to engage in this, and knowing what the end result could be, right? So like we said, it never feels like the right time. And once you join the journey, you always know that it's the right step towards doing the right thing. Part of it also is what does your outward appearance look like? What are people who don't know that there are great folks that work for you or in your running group, right? Is diversity a part of your mission and vision statement? Is it part of your policies and practice? Your leadership commitment? What is the accountability around this, right? Here's a great sample policy. We're committed to working towards fairness and inclusion for all. This begins with our employees. Practicing inclusiveness means giving employees support and opportunity to use their various skills and abilities within the workplace and removing barriers that limit the ability of people to fulfill their potential. With this in mind, we highly value diversity of people and their unique work experiences. We strive to be inclusive by treating others with dignity. I think that is a great statement. Ours is similar to this. We also added a portion in there of creating an environment where our employees can thrive, right? You want to have that environment where folks feel like that they can be there, not just bring their whole self to work, but they can work at the top of their license, the top of their skill set, and thrive in that environment. Here's a really, really strong one from, King County. This was from back when we had. I won't read this whole. Speak to.
Jovan, we're losing you a bit.
How about now? Is it back?
It's back, yeah. So if you could start at the beginning of this slide.
Okay. So for us, this is around, back when North Carolina had the issue with the restrooms, right? And a lot of folks pulled out of doing business in North Carolina. Here is King County, which is where I'm originally from, which is in Seattle. They basically put a moratorium on doing business with folks who were headquartered out of North Carolina due to the fact that the legislation that excludes lesbian, gay, and transgender people from using the restrooms, right? From having, from having the restrooms available to them. That is a big, big statement, right? If you've got some really major deals happening, and all of a sudden this entity is based out of North Carolina, and you're being told that you can no longer do business with them, that is one of the most ultimate put your money where your mouth is statements that you can have, right? Business will now be suspended for doing business with anyone that is based out of North Carolina. That is the ultimate put your money where your mouth is. Up next, I want to have another some more support. I'm over talking a bit. So I'd love to hear from Melissa Tuttle-Carr. Top 3 reasons you joined a running club and how will diversity benefit your experience? Now, Melissa is the co-leader of the She Runs This Town in Madison, a group for female identifying walkers and runners and non-binary and gender non-conforming individuals who are comfortable in a space that centers on the experience of women. She is also a member of OSLE, Volet, and Trail Sisters Madison. Please correct me if I said that incorrectly because names matter. Melissa, please share.
Yes, Wazelle Volet, I think is the right way to say that, but no worries at all. Thanks so much for asking me to share. I appreciate it. I'm already jotting down so many notes and learning so much here. So I joined running clubs and I chose to start one and lead one because I value human connection via shared experience and shared interests. I love to connect with people and I love to help other people connect with each other. I love to meet people and learn from others. And I like to be a part of and lead a space where everyone feels welcomed and valued. And I want to do the work to make that a reality. Diversity benefits this experience because we learn and enrich our lives when we're around people who are not exactly like us. You just don't get, you don't have a lot of opportunity to learn if you're just in a group of people that are all exactly like you. And that's not, really beneficial for anyone. I want to be around people who've had different life experiences than me and have different lenses on the world too. And I think that with running, even if our running experiences differ, even if I'm a 5Ker and somebody's an ultra runner, I still think that running is a connection point and a common ground that we all share. And that's a great starting point for conversations and getting to know each other, regardless of any anything else. And I also really think that a running group needs diversity in order to grow and feel welcoming to all. And we've already talked about this a little bit today. People need to see themselves in a group to feel comfortable attending and to want to return. If you're always the only person that looks like you, you're not going to feel like it's a space that it might not feel welcoming, or it just might not feel like the leaders are doing the work to make that space inclusive. And so all those things are just really crucial to build and grow a running club and to make everybody feel welcomed and safe and valued.
Love it. I love it. I love the human connection. And I agree. I think that the piece where you say you cannot grow, there's no growth. The opportunity lies within the diversity. I think most resonated with me, and I love that fact. Tim Wise will the next one, we'll have a video that comes up, and this gentleman Tim Wise will speak a bit to some of the antithesis of some of those things. Right? Is we value the connection, the people connection. Oftentimes, what happens is the people connection gets lost from a systemic point of view. I don't know if you remember from those bookends, but there's some systemic issues that have to be addressed first and foremost, or at least from the greater perspective or auspice of what is happening, right? Tim Wise will help us to see a bit about how we can do better. Can you all hear that?
Not yet. I can't hear anything yet.
Hold on a second. Let's pause that. Let me pull him back.
Very, very faint.
It's very faint? Okay, let's try this. Is that better?
No, still no, unfortunately.
Let's try this.
Getting louder.
Huh? Is it getting louder?
Getting a little louder, yes, but still difficult. Lost it again. Kate says there should be a button when you're sharing your screen to also help share computer audio.
Say that again. What was the piece?
There should be a button when you're sharing your screen to also share computer audio.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you might have to stop sharing and then share again and hit that button.
There it is. Got it. Good catch. All right. Gotta have it. Let's try
barriers, obstacles, difficulties, tensions are the kinds of skills that actually make for the best employees long-term, also for the best students. And so figuring out ways, maybe 2 or 3 ways to get at perseverance by really, first of all, of course, when someone's applying for a job, really getting to sort of know their background beyond that resume, beyond the obvious, beyond the formal, asking the kinds of questions that get at that issue. And of course, you know, the reality is it won't just be people of color or working class folks or women of whatever race or ethnicity who have overcome obstacles. There'll be plenty of white guys who have too. And that's the kind of white guy that you need in the institution. I mean, it's not that we're saying like white men are totally, you know, obsolete and don't have to get any of these jobs. It's just that we want the kind of person, whether white or of color, male or female, who has these kinds of character-based skills that our traditional criteria just don't get at. And so coming up with maybe 2 or 3 ways to assess perseverance, obstacle overcoming, the sort of overcomer tendencies that we need, because most of that research in the last 5, 10, 15 years around human resources, and particularly who make the best human resources in institutions, all of it sort of finds that adaptability, that flexibility within the workplace, and the ability to work together in teams collaboratively is another one, right? We know that a lot of times people who score really highly on like traditional criteria of ability are lousy at teamwork, right? So for instance, and this is not necessarily what would come into play in the job market, but you know, people who have really high formal IQ, for whatever that's worth, and it's worth really very little. For people who have really high test scores and did really well in traditional academic settings, they're oftentimes really horrible at working with other people, in part because they feel so superior to them that they're not willing to take other people's recommendations, right? So in a way, like being really traditionally skilled might not be what you're looking for. You want that person who is actually obviously skilled, obviously capable, obviously has something going on between the ears in terms of their abilities, right? But who also has that proven capacity for working in collaborative and collective settings and working with others, taking advice, taking criticism, taking feedback, and overcoming obstacles. So I would recommend looking at some of the non-cognitive variable information, but those are the criteria: overcomer tendencies, perseverance tendencies. Those are, I think, most important. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Welcome back, Tim.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Yeah. My question is this: I teach anti-racist education at the university level, and I often encounter folks who say, you know, anti-racist education is so negative, makes people feel bad.
Right.
What's your response to that?
Well, you know, here's what makes people feel bad: racism, right? So, you know, if some people are made to feel bad by anti-racism, I got nothing for you, you know, and certainly not sympathy. The reality is we wouldn't have to have anti-racism education if we didn't have racism. So if people don't like anti-racism education, there is one easy way to stop it, and that is get rid of racism. And then nobody has to feel bad. See how easy that was? Like, it just, to me, it's just fascinating to me how we invert the responsibility structure for the problem, right? So we say, well, the conversation is what's causing the problem. That's what people will say, right? They'll say, well, we didn't have a problem until you brought it up. You keep bringing up race. If you brown people would just stop talking about it, the problem would go away, right? And this is like a fascinating inversion of responsibility. You know, like brown folk were just like, I got nothing else to do today except just make up some stuff about racism, and I'm just going to concoct it in my own little head and scare the white folks. Like, is that really, you know, people will say, well, you're talking about race, you're just playing a race card. What kind of card is that? Like, I don't know if any of you play cards, but if race is a card, it's like the two of diamonds. It doesn't win any hand. So the idea that people of color would just be like, oh, watch this, I'm pulling the race card, Jack, because I'm going to get you now. You were winning this argument, but no longer, because I've got the race card in my pocket, right? It's not like white folks like wilt when we see the race card. Usually we accuse people of exaggerating and we shut down and the game is over and we win, right? So the race card is not exactly the trump, you know? People of color wouldn't bring it up just for fun. In fact, the research says folks of color usually stuff 90% or so of their experiences with discriminatory treatment precisely because they're afraid of being shut down. If anything, if we're hearing about it, you can bet we're only hearing 10% of what's really going on, maybe 20 in a good day, right? Most of it isn't being talked about. So we should assume it's worse than what we're hearing. And this idea that the conversation is what the problem is, or the conversation causes the problem, is sort of, just by analogy, that would be like blaming your speedometer for the speeding ticket that you just got. You know, like the speedometer didn't cause you to go that fast. It just basically told you what happened, right? It told you what you did. And there's not another social problem on earth where you would say the solution is talking about it less. It's making me feel bad to talk about world hunger. Stop talking about world hunger. If you keep talking about hunger, children will starve. If you would just stop talking about it, food would magically appear on the plates of the starving. Like, no, it won't, you know? You have to talk about the problem to solve the problem. I think the reason people get their feelings hurt is because they assume that when we critique systems of inequality, that it's personal. This is not personal, right? I already said at the very outset of today, I'm assuming that there are no overt racist and white supremacists in the room. I'm like just assuming that. And I hope I'm right about that. I'm assuming people are good people. I'm assuming that people don't want to hurt others. The problem is good people get sucked into bad systems all the time.
Right. And I fully agree with that. Right. It's not about having, a finger to point or to say that you're a bad person. Ostensibly, that system keeps rolling and pushing. The wheels keep turning. You don't have to wake up and say, hey, I want to do this to these folks or this subset of the population. If the system is already built, it is rolling without you. You just wake up and it is consistently going. So I totally, with Tim Wise, he, at times he can be a bit off-putting, but his message is generally super sound and truly appreciated by folks in the industry. I want to share this. A lot of folks have seen this before, but you'd be surprised how many have not, right? So we look at this equality versus equity perspective, right? Equality means we all have the same tools and resources available to us, regardless of our situation or our capabilities, right? In this situation, from an equality standpoint, they all have one box, right? And two can see, one The one on the far left is he can see without the box, right? He is or she are really tall and have the capability to see it. But in the true sense of equality, we want to make sure everybody has one box to say that we live in a state of equality, or we work, or we thrive, or we run, or we coalesce in a state of equality. Equity is that second picture, right? Whereas the child on the left is extremely tall. They can see without the box. The child in the middle is only needing one box in order to enjoy this game. And the child on the far right gets the same opportunity to see the game. And if you kind of look at it from a rudimentary perspective, they're all about the same height at this point, right? Whereas maybe the child on the right would love to say, hey, I want back to equality. The only way that this thing really works out for the three of these kids is if there's an opportunity for equity. And that's in a general sense. Now I manipulate the picture just a little bit just to tell this story. So in this situation is about assuming these kids all had to work a summer job, and the job was 50 apples need to be picked a day. And from the left side, right, you've got, the two kids on the left, kid on the far left will probably pick his 50 apples in about 30 minutes, right? He doesn't need the full, 4 hours that it takes. Now the kid in the middle may need a little bit more support, but he'll be okay. He'll get his 50 apples on for sure. The kid on the far right, there's no way that this kid is going to get any of these apples, right? And that's just by way of how he was born, he or she was born, and kind of where they are, either from an age perspective or just their current life state. There's no way that they'll be able to get 50 apples. Put them in an equity situation. The kid on the far left will still get their apples. Now, will they get them all in 20 minutes? Not likely, but it's a 4-hour job. The kid in the middle will still be able to get their apples done. And what the equity does is allows the kid on the far right to be able to get 50 apples, likely in the same 4-hour time as that they're being paid. Here's the difference in the kicker for this. We're just asking for the boxes and the opportunity for this kid on the far right to thrive. The ask is not to decrease the apples for the kid on the far right. We're not asking for the kid on the far right to only have to pick 25 apples because they're a little bit smaller. All we're asking for is this child on the far right to get those 2 boxes in order for them to thrive in this apple picking environment, right? We do not want the quota to change. We don't want the expectancy to change. We don't want the productivity to change. We just want the opportunity for this child to thrive in this environment. Yes.
Just a quick note. You can see your notes. So if you want to go into presentation mode.
Oh, okay. Did it pop up? Let's see.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good. It's good. So let me bring it back. Sure. All right. How about now? Is that better?
Perfect.
Awesome. So this is basically, you'll see this on a lot of the, the bottom of the emails. This is basically an homage to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's got the equal employment opportunity policy. You speak to it, you put your organization in there, you put your company's name in there, you put your team in there just to speak to it overtly, to say, we hire and promote individuals solely on the basis of qualification for the job to be filled. And at the bottom, it'll tell you a little bit of we're an equal employment opportunity employer, accommodations for people with disabilities provided upon request. So what this is saying is we recognize we have embraced it, and we also want you to know that this is the embrace that we have from a civil rights perspective. It's pretty long to read, but I'll send this out to you so you can have this in your notes. But it basically breaks down that there is no discrimination based on the majority of the isms that we come across in society. Norms. Here's a big piece of it. In order to have these conversations, there will be some difficult conversations to be had, some difficult moments, maybe some awkward moments. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of understand how this will feel. My ask is embrace, experience. You're going to experience discomfort. This is not going to be comfortable. Similar to that cartoon where the person was in the raft and say, hey, I'm comfortable here. You're going to experience some discomfort, but we all know that the growth, there's the growth is in that 5% outside of your comfort zone, that 10% outside of your comfort zone. That is discomfort by definition if it's outside of your comfort zone, right? We're not asking to go way out to the right or left. We're asking to come out 5 to 10%. And there's going to be some discomfort. Take risks. It is easy to stay in our own bubble and to stay there and to lock in and look from the outside looking in, almost like in a museum exhibit, right? I see what's happening over there, but I don't want to get involved. It may be too political. I don't know how my friends will react. I don't want to post this on Facebook. I don't know how my friends, colleagues, work will react to some of the more humanitarian things that are happening in the world. I don't want to engage to that perspective because I don't want to make a mistake. We have to take risks. In order for us to grow, we've got to be able to take those risks. Stay engaged. Don't jump into a conversation, feel like, okay, I wasn't expecting to hear what they just said, and then shut down. Similar to what Tim Wise said, right? Is if somebody shares with you an experience, and I'll just speak from the African American perspective, if that is being shared with you, the ask is that you stay engaged and please do not shut down. Even if you do feel like the race card is being played, which is a tough colloquialism to swallow, but please stay engaged, because in order for that growth to happen, you can. If you shut down, I shut down, we come to a stalemate. So please stay engaged, stay locked in. Listen for understanding. Like I said, the whole museum perspective of tell me a little bit more about your hair and all these other. It is a difficult way to get understanding and to get growth. So you want to listen for understanding. The old concept of 2 ears, 1 mouth in this perspective. That is, if you truly want to connect, if you truly want to understand, gain knowledge and perspective, the only way that will happen is if you're listening for understanding. And speak your truth, and also speak your perspective. I think leading with that will help to drive these conversations. My truth is this, hey, I've grown up in Wisconsin, Madison my whole life. I have not had a lot of exposure to, other people, other cultures, other communities. And I know what's happening in the world right now is not ideal, is not optimal. Would love to hear your perspective. And then is there anything that I can do as an ally to you, as somebody who cares about you, to share, right? You are disarming the conversation. You're letting them know that I'm not here to be an exhibit and tell me more about, the time you got arrested. That's not the thing. It is really speaking your truth, leading with your truth, to say, here are my intentions, and I would love to hear your perspective. And then also on the receiving end, speak your truth, that they're asking for clear and direct situational opportunities. Please share those with them. I mean, up to your comfort level, right? There must be a safe space there, but up to your comfort level. And expect and accept non-closure. This is the most difficult part about this, right? But we are people. We are not monolithic. We are not binary. Expect and accept non-closure. There's a term, agree to disagree, not my favorite term, right? But there are times where you come to a stalemate. I believe this, you believe this. We didn't come to closure. Or I've asked this question, the receiver of the message did not have the answer. That may happen, right? Or you ask this question, the receiver of the message, we could say a BIPOC person, they may then say, you know what? I don't feel comfortable speaking on all people of color, or for all Black people, or for all Pacific American. I don't feel comfortable speaking for all that. So please, let's back out of this conversation. I would ask is that you allow that grace, but also know that non-closure is a part of having some of these conversations, as in any other conversation in any relationship you build. And then no fixing. One thing that tends to happen is when we get into some of these conversations, especially in group settings, one person will make a statement. I feel like this organization does not respect or value the African-American experience, the African-American employee. And I've been told that my hair was unprofessional. Well, your head of HR may say, no, that is not the case. We've been working on these policies, so on and so forth. You haven't been working fast enough. I've been here 5 years and I've been talking about this ever since I got here. Now, the head of HR may now feel like you are calling he or she a racist and maybe begin to cry or maybe get defensive. Then you may get somebody who works for them, or the CEO comes in and says, well, I know Tammy, or Cindy, she is not a racist. So please don't talk to her like that. You see that jumping in to fix that situation actually did more harm than good. You have to let that conversation play out in a respectful and a professional way if you're in a professional environment, but you must allow that to happen. Have that conversation, that dialogue, allow her to tell this person who now feels frustrated after this 5 years, what the process was for the last 5 years. We started out from a base of 0. Nobody even understood that this was an issue. It took us a while to come to that. Then we did a survey for other people of color to see, is this the perception of us, right? And then another year we hired a consulting firm to come in and do another survey to give us some affinity groups, so on and so forth. So there was a process, it wasn't shared, and maybe the Cindy just didn't feel comfortable sharing it. But if the CEO jumps in to save her and says, hey, don't call her racist, the person who asked never gets to fulfillment, and Cindy never gets a chance to have some of these courageous and connecting conversations. Let me make sure that this is working, but this is a really great video on having a voice. Please let me know if you can hear.
You know that little voice in your head? The one that tells you to ignore a tasteless joke.
The one that tells you to keep quiet when a client makes a racist comment.
The little voice that tells you you're not smart enough because English isn't your first language.
Or that it's okay to judge someone for leaving early because they have family commitments.
The one that tells you not to say anything when others are being reduced to stereotypes.
Or that it's not a big deal when everyone's opinion isn't considered.
You may think you're the only one that hears that voice, but that voice also speaks to other people. It says,
You're different.
You're an outsider.
You lack commitment.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
Instead of listening to that little voice, you need to find yours and make it heard. It's time for all of us to speak up. Because when we change the dialogue, we can change our world.
I love that video. I think from what we previously saw, and that first slide that kind of came up, and it talked about being comfortable or uncomfortable, embracing the risks, right? There's a risk in the lady putting her hand on her coworker's leg and saying it's okay. What I would ask is, though, for the leaders that are on the call, if that happens in your environment, what do you do? There's about 3 or 4 different scenarios. What would you do as a leader or as a teammate or as a colleague or as a support system in that situation? At least from a professional perspective, right? You can stand up on righteousness and say, hey, she didn't get a chance to be seen. The gentleman who saw the lady in the hijab walk by, who was pregnant, saw that they were talking, stopped talking, and then likely whispered something about her as she walked by. He could stand up, come out and really wag his finger at him. Or he can do what he did towards the end and engage them in a conversation and find out, what is it that we're seeing, or what is it that you felt uncomfortable with as she passed by. I think it is up to oftentimes leadership to set the tone. And I think one of the pieces that we miss as leaders is we say, I want to create a space where everybody has a chance to speak. And that's all well and good, but have you created a safe space, right? Have you created a safe space for me to bring my whole self, right? I'll give you an example. I was in work and having a tough quarter. And my sales RVP that reports to me came to me and said, hey, boss, you know what? I mean, you get kind of frustrated, but you don't get as fired up as we do. We're kind of used from a sales perspective to have, this big raucous, hey, let's go kick some butt and all this other stuff. And, and a couple of F-bombs get dropped. We're kind of used to that. And for one, it's just not my character. But for two, it is, that's just not really how I fit in. And so I shared with them, I said, hey, I feel like I can still be effective without doing those type of things. And it also can, for those who are not used to that type of environment, it can turn them off. So as a leader, it is my job to make sure that everybody that works, is under my auspices or under my direct leadership feels comfortable in our environment. So you feel comfortable in the cussing and the high volume phones and slamming phones down and heck yeah, and all these other things that you're doing. And I appreciate that. And that's great there. But for the whole team collectively, that does not create a safe space. It does not create a safe space for my home health aide who's 65 years old, who got into this business to help out the geriatric population because she helped her mom the whole day. That does not create a safe space for her. So I would like for some of us as leaders to kind of look at some of these scenarios and how would I react in that, or as a colleague or as a support system, right? And then we talked about, like, one of the first slides I showed was, it is not, none of those things were absolutely overt. Nobody said, hey, I don't care about your opinion, or, hey, I think you leaving work to go to your daughter's soccer game shows a lack of commitment. But the looks, the sneers, the way that they, kind of ostracize them doesn't have to be said, right? It is the subtle nuances and the subtle contact that put those folks in those situations for sure. I'm going to get back to this. The Blind Spot, Whistling Vivaldi, all really great books. The Clock Still, Whistling Vivaldi definitely resonates with me greatly. And it is because just generally to my size and color, right? I'm going to be honest, speak my truth. I'm 6'4". I'm a very large human being. You will not miss me. And Clock Still's Whistling Vivaldi is basically a way that he could project peace. He could project class. He could project non-threatening perspective from anybody that comes to him. So what it is like was him walking down the street in the evening. And if he saw maybe a white lady walking by herself, he would begin whistling Vivaldi, right? Classical music, right? So most people will think somebody who knows classical music, let alone can whistle it and knows it by heart, is not likely to be somebody who would rob me, who would mug me, right? So he created a defense mechanism for those around him to make sure that they didn't feel afraid of him by whistling Vivaldi. Those are very extreme measures to go to make sure the people around you feel comfortable in your presence, right? Those are some of the things that people of color or underrepresented communities feel like they have to do in order to either fit in or not be pushed out as a tough part of the cake to eat. And as we said, change is tough, right? As you see back in the day, kids, is this a real picture? Maybe not. Back in the day, you can see newspaper boys are smoking cigarettes at the age of 8 and 10, right? So change takes time. I want to get to the advertising and outreach. But before that, we have a quick query. Why is it that diverse talent may not choose us? Now I got to get to my notes. I believe that is Katie Carlson, VP of Human Resources for Brooks Sports. Please share with us, Katie.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. Hopefully nobody else is. This could be a long list. When I started to think about this question, this could potentially be a long list, but I sort of think of it in 3 different ways. One is prioritizing your goals and your progress. Assuming the company or the organization you work for doesn't reflect the community you serve, or the communities where you work, which a lot of us are in that situation, you need to be transparent about that and specifically about the goals you've set, the progress you made, and then what you have yet to do. Even if you're talking about internally or not yet talking externally, on an interview loop, your people need to be able to share those goals or speak to that progress, just to see if they don't see possibility for themselves or a company that's progressing in the right direction, it could be a big reason to disengage. The other, and you just got done talking about this quite a bit, is this feeling of belonging. You know, people are really smart. Candidates in general are really good at sussing out in an interview process what their experience is, how they're being treated through the process, but also how people are being treated at an organization. And so as they assess for themselves in this interview process, they might even focus questions on what are the goals and what are the things the company is doing, and how are they connected to your values, or how do you operate? If that doesn't shine through, or someone can't speak to that clearly, also another reason to opt out. And then, you know, again, you've talked about this representation matters. If people aren't seeing potential leaders in their organization or throughout the organization, and see opportunities for themselves, and even how that's represented in an interview panel, talent may not be interested. I think you're open.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we have a second question for you as well, while we have you. The second one is, what are we willing to do different? With that being said, with what you just shared, what are we willing to do different in order to make sure that those who now will choose us, who would consider choosing us, will stay?
Yeah. So when I thought about this question, I didn't necessarily have context that we connected the first one. I think of a couple things. I mean, this list is long. For some organizations, the list could be really long of things you need to do different. You referenced this earlier on around, I think it was in one of the videos, around how we see talent, how we see potential when we're looking. I think it was Tim Wise who was talking about what are the things we're assessing in a candidate. But I think one of the things that comes with that is patience. We're talking about this at Brooks. If, you know, new positions usually come up because someone's left, or because you have an immediate need for work. And the fastest way to get candidates or to hire someone is to use your existing networks and to talk to candidates that are finding you. But if you know you're not talking to new communities or talking to diverse communities, your impatience is going to fail you, and you're going to end up right back in the same spot you've always been. So I think patience is a big part of what we all have to do differently in these conversations. And then the other thing I think about is being in a test and learn mode. This is really important in recruiting. And if you need to connect with talent you haven't traditionally connected with, you need to figure out new pathways. You have to build relationships with people, with organizations, with communities. You talked about this earlier. And sometimes maybe new technologies. And we're really trying to push ourselves as we try new things to assess and say, is it working? Is it not working? And then what isn't working? And let's shift gears and make change. And so we're trying to make ourselves think that way. That you gotta figure out what works.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And a couple of things that you touched on, we'll actually go into now. And it is greatly around, you know, your network. How will you network? You already have a current network that you work and you operate within. It's very comfortable to you. And in that network, we've got, you know, different networks for different things. My wife has a network for her intensity. What is that? She does CrossFit, right? So she's got a network from her CrossFitting. She's also licensed life and health advisor, right? So she's got a network that goes with that. She also works for a financial advising firm. So she's got a few different networks, and then she's got a friend network. And all these networks can coalesce, or they can align, and they can all, you know, be harmonious at times or not. But she's got a few different ones for what she uses and what she comes into contact with. But she did not rely strictly on her life and health network to be able to be all that sustains her while she's at CrossFit, right? She consistently updates as she's in a new environment. She consistently updates her network, or she puts in effort to reach out to create a new network. And one of the biggest pieces about it is to be intentional. Be intentional with it, meaning be intentional by way of empathy and humanity. Like I said before, create that safe space and do the work. Enter into the communities you would like to serve or support. When we do this facilitation, this keynote, this education, this learning and development, This is the one that people really want. They want to know, where do I go? What website do I go to? How do, just shoot me a bunch of websites. I'll go to their website and I'll join their mailing list and all these other things. But here's the real work. This is the work. This is the real work. You want to enter into that community, in that safe space. And if you can't create a safe space, it is likely due to a lack of trust. So you must enter, if you want this to be successful, position yourself in their safe space. Come to meet them where they are, right? And then you can begin to ingratiate yourself into their safe space as you start to create your own with them. The other piece about it is being proactive. I would not declare victory after two, underrepresented hires. If you hired one, you hired one veteran and one, African-American lady at 67 years old, I would not declare victory at that point. What ends up happening is organizations, they see it as a check the box scenario, right? Oh, so we did just get a little bit of diversity here. Great job. No, because once you hire them, to our previous point, do you have somebody to support them? Do you have a mentor? Do you have a coach to help them understand the operational rigor of the organization, how to negotiate the waters of the organization, where we are as an organization? Are we private equity about to be acquired? All these things that are happening that may be unbeknownst to them. Do they have that level of support, leadership, and mentorship in line for them already? If not, then they are likely to leave again. And if you declare victory at that point, you've taken your foot off the gas. And if these two people leave due to lack of support or just truly is not a great fit for them, you're back at square one again, 6 months all over again. So you want to make sure that you're very proactive, that you continue to prime the pump, always look to continue to grow your network, always look to see how can you be more of service to the communities that you want to serve, and be consistent about it. As anything else, be consistent. Be consistent in your activities to grow your network, but also say be consistent in your character. Be consistent in the fact that you want to reach out to this community to serve or to make them a part of yours, but not from, once again, that exhibit perspective, right? We've got one Black person, we've got one LGBTQ+, we've got one Latinx, and we're good to go. Be consistent with your message and also be consistent and intentional with how you do it. Now, here's the goal piece, right? The different places that you can go to reach out to people of color, underrepresented communities, a couple different resources here. Professional organizations like National Black MBA Association, conferences, seminars, job fairs, and networking events. These are all diversity recruitment resources. Naturally, the online Facebook, the online social networking, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the like. Other online groups that specialize in diversity outreach. And then similar to like we do at all times, right, is your own diverse friends, neighbors, and colleagues. I'm going to send out a little packet of information later on, and it's got a spreadsheet that basically breaks down the 10 people that are closest to you, kind of their demographic, if you will. And it is likely for most of us that it is very homogenous, right? And homogenous doesn't mean all white. It just means that it's pretty much all the same people. We all go to the same church. We all live in the same neighborhood, so on and so forth, right? If you don't have that, you will have to reach out to do that, right? So finding a way to have your own diverse friends, neighbors, and colleagues would be important for those who don't have that after they do that exercise. All right, one more. I think we only got one more video after this, but I love the videos that help to prove the points that we're speaking to. Uh-oh.
Companies have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in diversity initiatives, yet roughly 85% of board members and executives are still white men. Despite our best intentions, there are still unconscious biases that make people reluctant to go against the status quo. One study looked at these biases in both controlled and real-world scenarios and found that the diversity of a candidate pool had a huge impact on who got the job. In one experiment, participants decided between 3 male finalists. If 2 were white and 1 was Black, participants tended to choose a white candidate. But if 2 out of 3 candidates were Black, they tended to choose a Black candidate. In another experiment that looked at gender instead of race, participants had to decide between 3 equally qualified candidates up for the role of nurse manager. Even for a position that is stereotypically held by more women, participants tended to choose a man if men outnumbered women in the finalist candidate pool. You may think this is basic probability, but the numbers suggest otherwise. To confirm this, the researchers went outside of the lab and examined a real university's hiring decisions. They found that when there was only one woman or minority candidate in a pool of 4 finalists, they don't stand a chance of being hired. But that changes dramatically when there is more than one. And the difference between having 1 and 2 women seems to be what matters. The odds of hiring a woman were about 79 times greater if there were at least 2 of them in the finalist pool. And the odds of hiring a minority were 193 times greater if there were at least 2 minority candidates in the finalist pool. And this effect held, no matter the size of the pool. Having only 1 woman or minority in a pool of finalists highlights how different he or she is from the norm, and decision makers often unconsciously associate difference with risk or even incompetence. Managers need to know that working to get just 1 woman or minority considered for a position might be futile. But if they can change the status quo of the finalist pool by including 2, then diversity has a fighting chance.
That for me is one of my favorite videos. It is one of the videos that I learned the most from. I think a lot of what we present is some institutional data and information. I think it's some learned and lived observations. But to hear from Harvard Business Review, Harvard, if you trust that school, I'm a Kellogg guy, so those guys, those folks can go jump in the lake. But they have great data and they've got great perspective. So from that perspective, I learned a lot, especially as they said, I was following and I said, you know what, when you've got 2 and it's 50-50, that's it, there's two people of color or 2 men, that's 50-50. 2 and 2, that's, 2 of the 4, that's a 50-50 split. But as they started to exponentiate and as it started to grow, and all you needed was that 2 was a difference maker for me. And it just says that once again, is 1 becomes more of a novelty, where the second one looks like a true actual, when you have 2, they actually look like true candidates, right? Because you'll put 1 kind of in a box over here, right? And we'll see that coming up. You'll put 1 in a box to the side and say, maybe not. He came in, had a little stain on his tie, but maybe. When you've got 2, it actually psychologically creates candidacy for the other. Now I have to push through these a little quick as we're getting short on time, but these, which will be sent to you, and the reason that we don't send it out earlier is because you'd actually be looking at this while I'm speaking and wouldn't get a chance to kind of listen and the like. But you want to look at measuring experience from the hiring process, right? As we look at this one, does a job announcement say it requires a college degree? If yes, determine if a degree is necessary. Is it a nice to have or a have to have? Is it a want or a need? And then why? Be able to put it to those terms. Is there any mention of experience working with diverse populations, right? Are we getting credit for the work that we're doing? Will Brooks, because Katie is spending time with us, doing this and sharing with us, will Brooks get credit for doing some of this work and getting credit by saying, hey, we are a diverse organization that values, diversity as well as, as the clients that we serve, right? All those things, get credit for that. And it signals to others that it matters to you. They don't know that, Katie and Candace work together and they're all really great people. They don't know that from looking at your job posting. They don't know that they're really great people who care about one another in this organization or on this running team or in this running group. They won't know that without, actually meeting you. This is a way to signal to them that there's value in the diversity. Right here is the outward commitment to social justice. It's actually a checklist, right? So if you're from a basic perspective, what language is used to refer to the organization's belief in diversity, equity, and inclusion? Basic, tertiary, I read a couple books, CEO feels okay with it, managing partner feels okay with it. So we have anti-discrimination, we got an anti-discrimination policy. We have diversity in our culture. We are all for social justice. We value differences and we honor diversity, right? Those are all things that are pretty basic level. More advanced is anti-racism, That is a very hard stance, right? It is not, we don't appreciate it or just, it is anti-racism, right? We are culturally responsive. Addressing institutional and systemic issues, right? Not allowing privilege to get in the way of the business that we do. All those things are very hard lines that have been drawn. And then where's the language found in the job announcement, right? Is it at the beginning, in the middle, at the end? Is there only one statement? Are there 2 to 3 statements? Or are there 4+ statements as you speak to it, right? So there's a checklist as to say how much or what is your outward commitment to social justice to those who don't know, right? And then the language that you use. Does a job announcement contain jargon or acronyms that may not be understood by those outside the organization? When I was in the military, I had a SME for my SME. I didn't know that until 4 years in, but I had a subject matter expert for my safe mode electronics. Now that was not top secret information. That has now been publicized, so you're okay with that. But to have a SME for a SME is very confusing, right? A subject matter expert for your safe mode electronics. That would turn some people off. That could be a bit intimidating if not done in the right way. Does the application ask people to check either male or female, right? What if they don't confirm to binary, right? So then what? We're referring to the applicant, does the description use gender neutral pronouns such as they, them, rather than he, she? Those are outward things to show your engagement that you're along in this journey. Systemic barriers are testing. As you can read here, are applicants required to take a test? If so, determine if the evidence of that test ties to performance. My organization previously, we had a test that we had everybody that came in to take. People were not passing or they were not doing very well, and all of a sudden we did away with the test. So was the test doing its job by not allowing in people who didn't have the competency, the aptitude to be able to hold this position? Or was the test there to weed out certain people at certain times, and all of a sudden that we're hard up for resources and talent, we're going to do away with that test and just kind of do it by gut feel again, right? Well, we could have possibly lost some really great people by this testing that we now have just arbitrarily done away with. Criminal records, similarly. Are applicants required to complete a criminal background check? Depending on your industry, it is important, or maybe it is not. Maybe it's just tertiary and something that you do to help weed out candidacy. But in that, you may end up losing some strong people. More barriers. The accessibility one is a really big deal. One of the ones that was actually enlightening for me and resonated was the job required a driver's license, was driving a duty or a task for the role. That did not click to me that certain people may not have capability to be able to job, but we're asking for a driver's license. Well, what if you don't have to drive to do this job? What if you could take public transportation? When again, one of the things on there was, are the hours flexible, or do the hours align with the public transportation schedule, right? Because if the hours aren't flexible or don't align with the public transportation schedule, that means one must drive. Now, one must drive or Uber, meaning that they can afford that, which is not likely, but if one must drive and you don't have the capability to drive, now you're not a candidate for this role. You just lost potentially somebody who could be great for you. No one applied phenomenon. You want to look at your reputation. What is your reputation in the market? Similar to what Katie said, do you have representation? Are you just turning and burning folks, or are you actually bringing them in and making them a part of your organization and showing them value? You may have a reputation of good people. Some people may say, is the effort department, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it really worth doing all these things, come across all these change to bring in diversity? I feel like we're doing fine right now, right? If that's how people feel, that is how they will lead. How are you addressing your turnover? We just spoke to the job description language. And here you go again. Here's some great examples of job description language. Give it a couple of seconds to see a few of those. Implicit bias. One of the things that we just spoke of was when I spoke of, black and white candidacy a bit ago. This is basically the exact same resume being seen in this study. And when they told the person that Thomas Meyer was Caucasian, and it had in his exact same resume, they said, you know what, Thomas is generally a good writer, but needs to work on a couple things. Thomas has potential. Thomas has good analytical skills. So some of them were able to look past some of the issues that Thomas had because he was a Caucasian candidate, and some saw Thomas as an African-American candidate, said that Thomas needs lots of work. Can't believe he went to NYU. right? They let Thomas in, huh? We probably want to check that out. And Thomas is average at best. Exact same resume, exact same scenario. Thomas was not given the benefit of the doubt if he was African American in this situation. Malcolm Gladwell. As we start to look at our biases, we may say, you know, we didn't intentionally do this. As I said, that wheel keeps turning. And if you wake up one morning, it may look like this. Like, you don't have to intentionally go out and say, I want a white CEO, or I want a white COO, or male, or white male heterosexual Christian COO. You don't have to go out and specifically target that. If the system is moving, the system will bring you there. And you say, well, Jovan, that's a little hyperbolic, right? Well, here you have it. For leadership, they prefer tall white men. 58% of Fortune 500 CEOs are white, male, and 6 feet or taller. 14.5% of men are over 6 feet. So this is a specific group, right? Nobody went out and said we want that. But if the wheel keeps turning and nobody stops that inertia, that momentum, it keeps going, right? And I'm not white, but I'm in that number of being over 6 feet, right? 6 feet 2 or taller is 3.9% of the population, but 30% of the CEOs in Fortune 500. Nobody went out and said, I want a guy that's 6'3" to be my CEO, but the system and the machine kept moving. Another perspective is there's objective facts, there's what confirms you believe, confirmation bias, and then what you see is somewhere in between. One of the studies that is shown here is about underrepresentation in healthcare and management. I'm gonna have to push through these really quick. Is that, you know, people of color are underdiagnosed more frequently than others. And some of us has heard the scenario where the symphony had realized that it had mostly male members and they wanted to do something about it. So they put up a curtain during the interview process, and everybody turned their back and the candidates walked behind the curtain. Nobody ever got a chance to see them. The candidates walked behind the curtain and then they played their instrument, and they were able to make a blind decision for the symphony, which sounds really good. But then there's a secondary piece of it. Some women wore heels. So as they walk across the stage, you could hear the click clack of their heels. That alerted folks that is likely a woman. Therein biases may lie. So what they had to do is they actually asked people to, you know, kind of take off their shoes to be able to do this, to make sure there was no delineating fact, male versus woman, so that they could actually get the true best musician to hire. This is a great one, but it speaks to some of the things we just spoke to, so we can move past that. We're going to get into how we're going to choose our interview panel and the interview committee. It should have a foundational level of cultural competence. You have to have people on there who have either awareness of their bias or they understand a bit about this, because if not, if you keep doing the same things you've been doing, you're going to get what you got. Know your biases. I would have people on your interview panel doing IAT so that they understand their biases, right? You won't know that unless it is shown to you. That's why they're called blind spots. You could say, you know what, I don't really like Asian folks, so you know that's a no-no. That is not a blind spot. So if an Asian candidate comes in, then they are in trouble, right? But I would hope you would not have them on, that person on your hiring panel. But it is good to know your blind spots so that you can address them as you are in these panels. Have a diverse interview committee. It mitigates dominant voice bias. It creates the comfort for the candidate. If you walk in and, like we said, if representation matters, you don't see anybody that looks like you or anybody in the whole office that looks like you, it is not likely the place for you. It decreases stereotype threat, and it makes you feel like you're representing all people from the organization, which is always important as you're trying to attract top talent. And here's when people say, should the most qualified person get the job? Here is a look at what actual, I think they had a couple hundred decision makers on their gut instinct on who they would hire. And it is all these things. And you have no idea walking in. You have no idea that that you would be lacking humor would be number 8, and you would not get a job just due to the fact you lacked humor in your interview. You weren't ready to answer the question, tell me about yourself. That shows that the number one questions that's likely to be asked, if you don't answer that very well, tell me about yourself, in the way they'd like for you to answer it, you will not get the job. But that is only known to those who are in this hiring panel. That's why it's not good to only have one person do the hiring. You want to have a collective, because if this is one person's perspective, you're not likely to hire great people. Screening applicants, some of the same thing, more than one screener, get rid of ethnic racial markers on the resume, work experience versus degree, some of the things that we spoke to, skills versus grammar, and the like. Ask the right questions, right? What is the purpose of your questioning? And make sure that they're intentional about the questions that you give. Tons of ways to assess, and the more, the better. But you must come to agreement on how you're going to assess it before the interviewers walk in. If you're going to create this panel, come together and say, hey, these are the most important things for us to decide, right? Establish agreements. How candidates will be chosen, how you respond to questions, what are our foundational beliefs as a panel, as an organization, and let them know that you value diversity. Here's one of the ones that gets everyone. I just don't think you're a fit. Why not? Why not? And it's not likely that I am, right? If you're coming out to get more people of color, you're coming out to get diversity, you're coming out to get veterans, I am not likely a fit currently. What your intention is to make people like me a fit or to change the puzzle. Right now, you've got the same puzzle. Let's change the puzzle if you would like for me to fit. If not, if you don't have the same puzzle, I will never fit. Couple things for state practices, right? Tour of the organization, provide questions in advance so that they're prepared, because you want the right answers. You don't want the most polished person, unless it is the PR job and polish is the most important. You really want to understand, what can this person do for you? Do they add value to the organization? Get to know the candidate, consider for, if English is a second language for them, then debrief from them on the process of what's actually happening so that they feel comfortable and confident and don't think that you're kind of, you're just a token, person of color. You're just a token veteran. Take notes. If you do it right and it's an engaged conversation, you'll only remember 20% of what happened. We want to get to the recruitment. We got one more question. Why won't diverse employees stay? Harry Chandler, please stay. Share. Harry is currently a manager, but has also been an employee, so he's got a perspective on both sides of this equation. Harry, please share.
Where am I? Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, technology. I think for the sake of optics, a diverse demographic or group is important to see. So someone like myself does feel comfortable coming into a place. I think where it's missed is when you have that diverse group, there's more room for inclusion, which is great, but there's also more room for the feeling of alienation. So I think the most important thing is making sure that people feel comfortable coming into a place and providing an environment that they feel comfortable coming into. A lot of team members that may be not in the majority tend to omit important parts from their lives because they don't feel like it'll be accepted or that'll lead in negative consequence with their job. But because of that, they never feel welcome or a part. So I think that the best thing to do there is provide an opportunity for them to have open door policy and have open dialogue and conversation about what can we do to change our environment to make you feel comfortable so that you do stay and don't end up leaving. So I think the biggest thing about why people leave is they don't feel comfortable and they don't feel like there's room for that comfortability.
Harry, that's a great share. That is a great share, and it aligns itself with some of the conversation we've had. So thank you so much. That support system, that infrastructure matters. I know I've got one more video to help kind of tie this whole thing together. It's one of my favorite ones, but it brings about some closure. A little retention perspective. Have a strong onboarding process. This is what you would do if you wanted to retain any talent, not just diverse talent, not the isms that are affected by systemic, oppression. This is just good, and these are all great things to do in general, right? So if this is a part of your current DNA, to add a DE&I lens to this will be a bit more simple. But if all these things are new, right, you're probably also losing not just the opportunity to have diverse talent, the homogenous talent as well may not be staying. So it is wise to have a perspective and some processes aligned with this. And here we go. This is my final video. I had a ton of them for you, but this is my favorite one because it kind of brings us all together.
There are people out there that would consider me quote unquote, I hate this word, but a terrorist?
As an Indigenous person, you were known as somebody who potentially could be a drunk, have substance abuse issues.
Being Indian, they have expected me to like know a lot about computers.
It's sometimes a really unique experience navigating the world as a person with a disability who looks to be completely able-bodied.
He made a comment about, well, don't worry about this that's going on because you won't be here too much longer. You'll be off having your next baby soon.
Most women are, told they need to behave a certain way.
People really think that my generation is lazy.
Just another blonde waitress.
Hey, do you rap?
The only Black girl.
I didn't belong.
I guess kind of growing up, people made these assumptions about what I was supposed to be, but it was really eye-opening for me to realize that I had been making those same assumptions myself.
We all like to think that we're inclusive, but sometimes we don't actually step back and think, wait a second, did I hear everybody in the room?
I mean, don't judge is the message, but it's also hard not to.
I always thought that every gay man was flamboyant and rude.
The older generation is set in their ways.
Initially, I thought there was something weird about a girl who would want to be a camera operator because of the word cameraman, and we still have to work past these things and stuff.
I went into the school on my first day, and there's these little girls, and they're wearing hijabs, and I was really intimidated by that.
Have your initial judgments, but also be willing to learn.
My definition of inclusion is a world and a society in which constructed barriers have been torn down.
Inclusion for me is setting up an environment where everybody is comfortable.
Open to accept other people's opinions.
All individuals, regardless of their diversity, feel welcomed, feel respected.
It means that they don't have to try to be what others expect them to be.
Change is possible, but it takes the right person to make a change happen.
I had a shop floor supervisor who stood up for me and sent out a company-wide email saying that Robin has every legal right to use the women's change rooms. It's funny because you do find allies in some of the strangest places.
One thing we can do to support inclusion is to talk about it.
You have to demonstrate that you're committed to this.
Get to know people around you. Do something different. Learn something different. Learn about a culture.
Different races, different religions, different belief systems, and see what there's good in all those things.
Be an active listener. That's one of the things I practice with other immigrants as well.
Open up your mind and take your time and get to know someone instead of putting them in this box. Just showing that interest, it's going to surprise you.
Ask me a stupid question. I don't care if it's a stupid question, just ask me.
I'm an open book and willing to answer them.
I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it as a teachable moment.
Just ask me how to pronounce my name.
It's simple. You decide that other people's feelings and experiences matter.
We need to have more uncomfortable conversations so that we can drive more inclusion. And oftentimes, it's not easy.
And it's important, otherwise change will never happen.
My name is Shomodeep Ganguly, but people call me Sam.
I am Layla Karem.
Mutsa Matanga.
Ms. Genevieve Leblanc.
Ashley Pasila.
Patrick Duff. Neil McLaughlin.
Helena Gotchling.
Rod Bolger.
Jessica Shue.
Kazim Marcano. I'm a chef and I forge metals.
A proud mother.
Forklift operator and a truck driver.
I envision a day when we can just be so accepting of each other, where we can make space for others.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. My intention with that last video hopefully was to bring all things said, all the comments, all the question answers together in one video. Now, I apologize. We only got about 4 minutes for questions, but I will open it up, please, for any questions that we may have for the next 4 minutes. And if your question is not answered, we don't get a chance to ask it. We do have those stretch conversations that will be coming.
Yes. For saying that, Jovan. I'm going to mute so that echo stops. The biggest question people asked was, will the deck be shared? If not, how can they get access to some of the videos and materials? And I'm gonna, unmute yourself.
Yes, I will share definitely parts of the deck. I can send you the videos. Those are all public. I got those. You can see some from, HBR and some from RBC. So I can definitely share those. There's also a couple worksheets in assignments that can be given from an HR and from a team perspective to be able to continue to do some of this work. So yes, I can make that available for you.
Perfect. Then we had a question from Derek. One second. The question was, working in the event space of the endurance industry, I feel that it has been a revolving door of the same faces from one organization to another, one race event to another, as opposed to recruiting and cultivating a robust talent pool outside of the industry. Are there any strategies for combating the assumption of, I have to be a runner to apply for this job in the endurance industry, as opposed to simply adding a sentence or mention, you do not have to be a runner or have previous running experience to apply? So how do we get people outside of the running industry into the industry?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, and that's right, diversity of thought, diversity of background, which is always good as well. I think it's being overt about it, right? Make that one of the first or few things that you say. Network outside of the running community, right? If you only have your network in this community, I mean, it's a great question to ask, but have we done the work to expand out our network? The overtness and the ability to step outside your comfort zone will answer those questions. Use your current network, right? The cachet or the influence of those you already know, like, and trust. Hey, you know what? We're looking for more people who've got an operational background. You got your MBA from Tough. You got your MBA from USC, right? Tons of people there. Did you have anybody from your class or anybody that you previously worked with in the past that have got a skill set? Because here are the needs, right? So maybe an opportunity for you to lead with the needs more so than the industry, right? We need a great operator who can manage P&L and has $50 million P&L experience, hiring, firing capability, and HR perspective in California. Well, that says nothing with running, right? So maybe lead with the need more so than the industry and the ask.
I love that. The need. The last 1 minute, I'm gonna drop really quickly. If you have to leave, please feel free. How would you recommend addressing a customer's inappropriate comments versus a staff member? And I guess the distinction, because the customer, right? Customer's always right. So how do you navigate that situation?
Absolutely. And I think there are certain parts of it that are similar, right? For a staff member, you would go to them directly. You would say to them, hey, I didn't like that joke. I didn't like the way that you said it, or I didn't like the way you treated me. And give them the opportunity to tell you that is not my intention. That is not what I meant by that. And that makes it a point of connectivity for you both. Now, if they double down on it, right, then you've got administrative ways that you can handle that, right? Now, if there's a lack of trust up top, then there may be an opportunity that you want to consider, is this the right place for you? If you cannot get that to resolution, right? If the organization says we have a zero tolerance policy and then it's being tolerated, then maybe they're not standing next to that. From a customer perspective, I think you say, hey, you know what, sir, ma'am, maybe you didn't intend to say it this way, but this is how I received it. And here we have a zero tolerance policy. And we do have a right to serve or not serve you. So I will give you an opportunity to maybe retrace that or to say that again, but I'll let you know how that landed with me or how I received that. And if they double down on it, once again, you've got policy for that. My piece to this, though, is if you are the employee's colleague and you are there, one powerful thing is to just come and stand next to them. You don't have to say anything. As they're explaining themselves to the customer about how they feel like they've been mistreated, you don't have to jump in and get passionate with them. If you just stand next to them in solidarity, it does a lot. It lets them know, for one, that I'm not alone, but it also lets the customer know that they're not alone. And that person standing next to me also will not stand for the way that I've just been treated. So if you are, it's a greater move if you are the colleague to add support. But if not, then you've got administrative channels, or you've got company policy that says, you know what, sir, okay, maybe I'll have to, I don't want to have to call security, but we do have a policy that says we have a right to refuse service to those who may not comply with us. If we've got a zero tolerance policy and I feel abused or I just feel threatened.
Thank you so much for giving us that language and those skills. This was excellent. Everything in the comments is saying thank you. This was inspiring. And folks, I have dropped the link a few times to join us for stretch sessions next week. Please be sure to join us and stay tuned for any materials coming from Jovan. Thank you, Jovan.
Thank you all. I appreciate you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, Jovan.